welcome once again to the Irish in Sweden podcast. And lads, I'm still Moby Dick, still suffering here, it has to be said. So it hasn't really been the week that I would have expected. I've made numerous attempts at a comeback. You can hear it still in my throat there. Numerous attempts made at a comeback this week. Tried to do a little bit of work on Friday. Had the wonderful Anthony Morrissey up here in Stockholm, so we had a little meeting there. Myself, Molly Breen and himself got together, and loads of great things, loads of irons in the fire, and then just the cold just came back. So I'm having a hard time shaking this one. I really would have loved to have been at the Seven Drunken Nights performance in Stockholm this evening, but alas, I'm sitting in front of my television and I can't go anywhere. So I'm hopeful I'll recover this week, and of course that has sort of affected the plans for the podcast for the week and the interviews I wanted to do and that kind of thing. So we're a little bit behind, but we're going to catch up now because we're coming into a very, very busy period indeed. As I say, I haven't been very ill, so I haven't really had the energy to do a whole lot of research and everything else, but I do have a wonderful interview coming up for you, and it's remarkable because I think this is going to be one of the shorter podcasts of the year, but it's also going to be one of the most listened to, right? Because this week we have the majestic, the wonderful Doreen Burke from the Irish Embassy right here from the Ireland House at Hovslagagatan number 5 here in Stockholm. And myself and Doreen were talking a little while ago, and we were saying, right, I need to get her on the podcast to talk about passports and how to renew them and when to renew them and how you go about the process and what you need and the amount of time you need and all that. So I went into the embassy a couple of weeks ago and I was still feeling fairly decent, and we sat down and we had a lovely cup of tea made by Jim Kelly. And Jim was saying that he hoped that the tea wasn't what actually gave me the cold and that kind of thing, but it certainly wasn't. If anything, it probably kept it at bay for a day or two. And then we had an old chat about passports and that. Before I get into that, as I said, there's a load of things I want to get to you, but I do want to let you know that our good friend down in Malmö, Peter Miller, is after starting a ceramics business, and he sent an old text message around to various people that he knows here in Sweden, people he had in his phone book, about starting this business, and he's setting up a Patreon page for it as well. And I'm delighted for Peter that he's starting the business, and I'm also delighted that he's taken the Patreon route, right? Because it's one of those things, I think that for small businesses, and especially for people like myself in media and for people like Peter working with crafts and ceramics, I do think it's the way forward. I think it's one of those things that, small micropayments and supporting one another, well, I suppose the way we support the brewers and the other businesses around the place as well, that's kind of the way forward. So I will include the link in the social media posts, right? And if you want to support Peter, please do. If you want to support this podcast, patreon.com/Our Man in Stockholm is the place to go ahead and do that. And I'd be very pleased if you did, because to be honest now, it's a long time since anybody actually signed up for it. And it does really help, because like the last week or so when I haven't been feeling well, I'm self-employed, so I don't get to take time off, I don't get to take holidays, or I don't get to be sick. But what happens is I end up having to prioritise the things that do bring in the money, and that means that that this work suffers just a little bit. So if you can, patreon.com/Our Man in Stockholm, and indeed support Peter Miller as well. We'll have Peter on the podcast very soon to talk about his new venture. I'm going to see, as soon as I'm well enough, I'm going to nip down to Malmö on the train and have a chat with him, whether that be before or after St. Patrick's Day, more of which we'll get to, but he'll certainly be on the podcast very soon to talk about that. And again, we'll put out the shout out. It's great to have a woman on the podcast today. I know that you have loads of great stories and that kind of thing, and if you want to be on the podcast, do get in touch. Right, I can feel that I'm about to have another coughing fit, so I'm going to grab an old Lemsip rather than a cup of tea made by Jim Kelly, and here is the chat that I had with the wonderful Doreen Burke from the Irish Embassy, and I'll be back to wrap it up when we're done chatting about the passports. Hey, we talked about off air there just before we started, Dory. This is it. You're getting to call your shot here. Your 5 minutes of fame on the Irish in Sweden podcast. Can we maybe start with what happened for St. Bridget's Day here? There was an event, I believe, Hannah was just telling me, that you've just taken down and packed up for the year. But how did the embassy mark Bridget's Day this year? Absolutely, Philip. So that these days it's no longer just about St. Patrick's Day, even though he's certainly the most important saint that we have in Ireland, but St. Bridget is certainly up there now as well. So last year was the first year that St. Bridget's Day was a public holiday in Ireland. Unfortunately, it hasn't made it quite over to Sweden yet. But we did mark the day still. And yesterday we had invited 2 Irish speakers over to discuss the role of women and creativity, women in design in Ireland, and how women are kind of contributing to the cultural conversation in Ireland at the moment. So we had designer Alison Keneally and her fantastic
piece of art called Ascension. It was a huge big tapestry. You might have seen photos of it there on our social media sites.
It's incredible altogether.
Absolutely. And then we had anthropologist Sarah O'Rourke. So she's a PhD student in Maynooth University. She was speaking about the significance of art as a vehicle for social change and the role of women and iconography and that kind of thing in art history. So absolutely fascinating discussion. We're delighted to have a full room in the residence for that to celebrate St. Bridget and all she stands for.
Yeah, I saw those fantastic photographs yesterday, and it's brilliant to see this kind of thing. It's still one of those things, as you mentioned, that's in its infancy, you know, and we were talking about it between myself and Molly and Ant on the podcast. We're going, okay, we have to mark this somehow. And it's one of those things that, like, you know, we're really going to have to do more around because it's such a brilliant idea. And it also comes at a time post-Christmas, post-New Year, when people really need something to rally around. And I can't think of anything better. So I'll probably be robbing your photographs now, you know, before this episode comes out. And
And I'd encourage all your readers as well. We have, thanks to Tourism Ireland, fantastic centre page supplement in Doggin's New Heter, the travel guide, all about St. Bridget's Day and celebrating St. Bridget's Day in Ireland. So I'd recommend to all your readers get the cup of coffee over the weekend and have a look at that fantastic article that we have in Doggin's New Heter this week.
And there's brilliant pictures and everything to go with it, and there's a Bridget's cross there and everything else like that. So that's in Doggin's New Heter. It came out on, was that today, Friday the 2nd of February as we're talking. Yeah. And it's in the guide. That's their whole sort of tourism guide, isn't it?
That's the travel guide, travel supplement.
And just the whole sort of front page is taken up by...
Exactly. We've clipped them over there on the first page and a big spread, Tourism Ireland spread, page 36 to 37. So take a look at that if you haven't seen it already. It's a fantastic exposure for our wonderful little island here in Sweden.
And not only that, you may as well talk to your friends, your relatives and everything else if you happen to have the newspaper at home. I know my wife had it for years. It used to land in the postbox every morning, you know. So we'll be talking to people about that now and try to get them to book their holidays to Ireland. Listen, you can't go to Ireland without a passport, right? Now, this is one of those things that has come up again and again and again. And it's kind of like, I should probably do this podcast every year, but we're going to do it now. This is going to be the reference episode for the future, right? There's a lot of people here who work here. There's a lot of people here with children born here who weren't born in the Rotunda Hospital as I was, or maybe, I don't know, where were you born? Were you born in?
The Lourdes Hospital of Drogheda.
The Lourdes Hospital in Drogheda, proudly so, you know. What is the process, right? For an adult like me, 53 years of age, have a passport already. I need a new passport. I realise in good time, a couple of weeks beforehand, how do I go about renewing my passport here through the Irish Embassy in Stockholm?
Phil, I think it's brilliant timing to have this discussion because people, you know, spring hasn't quite sprung here in Sweden. People are thinking over, am I going to go on the holidays? Am I going to get home for St. Patrick's Day, or will I visit the family later in the summer? So absolutely great to have that message out so early that you need to look at your passport expiry date and apply early and apply online, Phil, to answer your question.
That's how to do it.
So it's absolutely apply online. So back in the day, you know, you were looking to book an appointment here at the embassy, or you were looking to, if you were up north in Sweden, to come down and try and book in here. But now it's so easy. It's all online. Ireland.ie, and then just type in passports and you get all the information that you need there. In your case, a simple adult renewal, really quick and simple. The current turnaround time for that is only 10 working days. So that's fantastic. Like from the moment that you press submit and all your documents and all your photos are submitted and accepted by the passport office, you're looking at 10 days until you receive your passport.
4 days, that must be the postage time for Ireland, is it?
That does not count for postage. So that was my asterisk there.
That's the caveat on that one.
That's a little caveat, exactly. And look, we know Post Nord isn't always the most reliable service.
Geez, they're not bad now, given, you know, I mean, sometimes when things go west, some things you can forget, right? But for the most part, I have to say,
for the most part they are. And look, usually there's no issues. And look, we've heard fantastic stories. You see it online all the time of people applying on the Sunday evening and they have their passport waiting at the doorstep on Wednesday morning. So in most cases, it's really, really quick. So look, my message is just, apply online, absolutely. You don't have to fooster around with paper applications or anything like that anymore. All the information online, and you upload your photo even from your phone or your iPad, get someone to help you if you're struggling with that. And it's really simple. I did it myself there recently for the first time in 10 years and it was simple as.
Can I give you to everybody listening to this is not Doreen now, because Doreen's a bit of a diplomatic influencer. She knows all these things. 2 phones, lads, right? Use one phone for taking the picture and the other phone for the light. This is not from me. This is from my 17-year-old at home, because I was doing it for an accreditation last night. And the difference, the first one looks like, you know,
you're in a bathroom somewhere in a nightclub or that kind of thing, if you just take it with your own phone. The second one, when you have the second light on, it looks like an actual passport photograph.
That's a brilliant tip, Phil.
Neutral background, get in there and get that on. What can go wrong, right? We apply online and that kind of thing. And you know the way old people like me, we always like to have somebody at the end of the phone or some, person we can chat with online or that kind of thing. Is there anything people need to think about, like the photograph, is there anything else that they might sort of stumble over that might delay that process that you can think of?
Absolutely. So the number one is the photo. You might think you've taken the most beautiful photo in the world and you have your duck face and you have your lovely pose and it won't be accepted, So you're looking at a really plain, blank background. You're looking straight ahead. You're not smiling. You're not wearing a lovely hat. You're not wearing your St. Patrick's Day scarf, that kind of thing. It's, a neutral photo. So make sure you read the guidelines about what kind of photo is accepted. And make sure you follow those guidelines. So that's the number one reason that passport applications are rejected.
Is it the number one reason?
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah. So get the photo right and read all the requirements. And you say, get a friend or a son in your case to help you and
hold up the light there. Get it sorted out. Fantastic. If when it comes to our descendants, right? So my daughters or my wife, I don't think is actually entitled to an Irish passport. I'm sure she'll take that up with you in the future. But when it comes to the children of the Irish community who are born here in Sweden, right? Yeah. Different ball game.
Absolutely. So we are all used to, those of us who were born in Ireland, we all know what a birth certificate looks like, that long form birth certificate, the handwritten. It's a beautiful document. There's no exact equivalent of that in Sweden, and that's kind of what confuses people at times. And we get a lot of questions here at the embassy about that. So if you have a child born in Sweden, what you need to do is get a familjebevis from Skatteverket.
Familjebevis from Skatteverket.
Exactly.
Okay.
And you can order that online. And the version that they send you has a kind of a stamp on it to show that it's an official document. And that's the document that is accepted then as your Swedish equivalent to the birth certificate.
Okay.
So that is what you need to get if you have if your child is born here in Sweden.
And that will obviously have my name as the father on it. It will have my wife's name as the mother on it. Is that enough? Because do I need to send, my passport, my birth certificate to you?
Plenty of other documentation that you will need to send. Again, it's all online. So first-time child applications are done online, which you'll have to send supporting documentation in the post. So I'd advise you to go on to Ireland.ie and passports and click on the child, first-time application for a child, and you'll get all the information that you need there, in particular for applicants who are applying from abroad as well, the various applications that they need. You'll need to get consent from both parents, Phil, so you'll have to get the permission from both parents in order to apply for your Irish passport.
Yep.
And then you'll also have to get that witnessed by someone else. So there's a list of different kind of roles and professionals who can witness your documents. We can do that here in the embassy as well. There's a small fee attached to that, but it's quite a standard thing to ask of, like a school teacher or a police officer or a priest or something like that as well. But the whole list of professions accepted are included there on the website.
And of course, like a regular solicitor here can do it, notorious publicus. Exactly. There's loads of different public figures, so it shouldn't be. I remember back in the day, I think it was a little bit more restrictive. And I remember going to a police station where they're like, get out of here. We're not doing that, you know.
And look, that can still happen in Sweden. I don't know if it's maybe as common as a practice or something like that. So we do have people calling saying, God, I've asked 10 different people to witness this form and they can't get it, but then they can just come into the embassy and we can sort that.
That's the easy thing to do. But somebody who's living in Östersund or up in Luleå, that kind of thing, go find, local police officer.
Absolutely. Police officer or, a school teacher, a member of the clergy, medical doctor can do it as well, solicitor, notary, bank manager. There's a whole amount of people who can do it for you, and the full list is on the website.
So you just find somebody who's basically trustworthy. And
that's exactly it, yeah, and who can confirm your identity.
So the form is attached to that then. I assume that because the Swedish parent or the parent from another country would have to co-sign, this is a paper thing you have to print out. And
print that out, exactly. So best if you can have printing facilities at home or you can print it in the office or whatever.
Yeah. Libraries in Sweden tend to have tend to print things out as well, and some of the convenience stores. But libraries in particular are a good place to go and get it done quickly and cheaply. The time frame, we have 10 days for a renewal for an elfin like me, right? What's the time frame for this? How long would, if I want to bring my kids for St. Patrick's Day, I'd want to kind of do it this week, would I? To give them a month.
Absolutely. I think just based on what we spoke about before, the postal services as well, Phil, just as much time as possible, I think, just to have that buffer zone for you.
Yeah.
For the online child or the kind of more complex renewals, if you're changing your name or something like that, the average turnaround time is 15 working days, so it's still pretty good, but I would always err on the side of caution and apply as early as possible.
Yeah. Again, we spoke about with the renewals for an Irish adult who was born in Ireland, right? That's one thing. Is it the same thing? Is it that the photographs aren't right? Is that the same rejection issue?
Exactly. Yeah, look, typically those applications are turned around really quickly and they're really easy to apply for. You've already had the passport, you've submitted all your original documentation before, but the photos are still the stickler.
And is it the same thing for our descendants then as well? Is that the main thing? Or is it because we miss getting the signature of the other parent? Well,
it can be that as well, yeah. For the more complex ones, for the first time applicants, there's lots, there's quite a good bit of documentary evidence that is needed. So you need to just really read very clearly and read it a second and third time, everything that you need, and then get all your documents together and just double check. Because that's the annoying thing. You kind of think you're done and you're expecting your 10-day turnaround time, but that's only if you have all the documents provided correctly. Yep. Now, the passport office will always check your documents really early on and get in touch with you very quickly via email to say that you need a such and such extra document or that there's an issue with the photo or something like that. So, you're always kind of kept up to date on the process as well.
There's a kind of a checklist as well. Is it Ireland.com?
Yeah, Ireland.ie.
Ireland.ie, yeah. And you just search for passports there, and they'll tell you all the bits of paper you need, right? So write them down on a post-it. As you're putting in the envelope, tick them all off as you go. Yeah. And that will sort of speed up the process, right?
Absolutely. And just think everything needs to be an original document. So it can't be a photocopy of your familia visa, or it can't be, something that you've scanned and then printed out. It needs to be original documents when you're applying for a first time.
I have a very specific question, right? Because my two kids now who are 19 and 17 are applying for their first Irish passports. And originally when I applied for the birth certificate, I was sent, is there still a difference between the short form and the long form birth certificate? Because I think I was originally rejected because I sent a short form birth certificate. Is that still a thing?
That is a very good question. I don't have that information to hand, Phil, but
really difficult putting on the spot. I apologise.
A really good tip that I do have, it's actually the HSE in Ireland, who is the kind of competent authority for issuing birth certs. If you've been here 20, 30 years and you think, God, I haven't seen my birth cert in nearly as long, you can apply to them for a new birth certificate.
Yep.
So go on to hse.ie and get information about getting a new birth certificate if you can't.
Yeah. And again, from experience, that's a very, very quick process. I ordered one a few weeks ago because, as I said, I think a couple of years ago, I got the short form one that didn't work and I forgot about it. And then I got one now this time, which I will be checking with you after this conversation to make sure it's the right one to send in. The last area that I'd like to bring up with you, right, is that we know neither the day nor the hour. Things happen. Sometimes we have to get back to Ireland very, very quickly. If I realise, hang on a second, my passport is out of date, what chance do I have? What's the best way to prepare for that situation?
Very good question. And like all of these kind of scenarios would be dealt with on a case-by-case basis. Yep. If you've lost your passport, the first thing I'd say is report to the police immediately. You don't want your passport there hanging around in Afghanistan or wherever it is. Make sure that it is reported as soon as you discover that it's missing. In terms of out-of-date passports, like if you have an emergency that you have to get home for, I would say just get in touch with the embassies as soon as possible and explain your situation to them. So there's kind of two things that we can offer in that kind of situation. If you're based here and you have a little bit of buffer time to get a new passport, we would often ask you to apply online and apply for the regular passport. And we can ask sometimes for that then to be expedited, so for it to arrive even quicker than the 10 days turnaround time. If you are backpacking here or whatever and you lose your passport and you're running out of funds and you really need to get home and you don't have any support network here, that kind of thing, we can issue what's called an emergency travel cert, an ETC. So that is a document that allows for one-way travel back to Ireland, and it's really only issued in cases of emergency.
And it's one journey.
Absolutely. And if you lose that piece of paper, you're on.
You deserve whatever's coming
Yeah.
to you.
And look, it's not a piece of paper that can get you to your villa in Spain.
No.
If you forgot to renew your passport in time, it's really issued only in cases of emergency. And if you have your holiday booked to Australia and you're calling us the day before looking for that, it's not going to wash, unfortunately. It's really just to get you back home, get you back somewhere safe where you have a support network in case of emergency.
Again, I said that was the last question. It's not. There's always just one more question, like Columbo, right? I was in Norway last year working in July, and I got to the airport, and whoever booked the flight for me had booked for me to fly back with Ethiopian Airlines, which was stopping over here on the way to Addis Ababa. When I got to the airport in Norway, there was a passport control, right? Okay. Luckily, you had beaten common sense into me a couple of years ago and told me, get one of these passport cards for yourself and Austin Gormley, our previous ambassador, and it's literally the size of something that fits into your wallet, right? Is that something that I can order? Can I have both the passport, the credit card size passport, and my regular pages and leather passport?
Absolutely. You can have both, Phil, but what you can't have is just a passport card.
Okay.
So you always have to have your regular 10-year passport if you want to get a passport card on top of that.
Yeah.
But it's fantastic to have because it's that buffer. If you forget your passport, if you're flying Schengen and you don't realise there'll be an airport check, something like that, it's brilliant to have the passport card. But just be aware as well, that is not for travel to the United States or to Asia or to countries in Africa. It's purely for EEA travel, so within the EU and Schengen zone.
So it's a European economic area.
Exactly.
Most European countries will be covered there.
Exactly. I think it's about 33 countries that are covered with the passport card. Just double check that. It's really handy to have. And even as a form of ID, I think it's useful. But you always have to have your regular passport as well.
Yeah. It was gas because I went up to the window, the man sitting there, he's going, no, your passport. And I went, that is a passport. I went, it's not. And I went, scan the thing. And he scanned it, and his face lit up and go, I never thought that was a passport.
It's fantastic.
It was the first time that he'd seen it, and it was brilliant altogether. Yeah. For those of you who are resident in Sweden as well, you can get a national ID card here, which fills the same function, basically, Are you able to say, is this a big part of the job of the embassy here in Sweden to deal with people losing or renewing or registering for passports, or is it just a tiny part of what you do here?
It's really interesting. I think since passport applications went online, Phil, it's really reduced the burden on
We're popping the champagne corks here with that.
Not quite, no. And look, we're always here for any questions you have around passport renewals, passport applications. And indeed, look, if you're not comfortable with using online or anything like that, always get in touch with the embassy. We're absolutely more than willing to help in those situations. But no, I wouldn't say it takes up a huge amount of our time here, mainly for the ETCs, I would say. So for the emergency travel back, we'd always be in a position to help people in those kind of complex scenarios. But look, Passport Online is absolutely fantastic. Apply online, apply on time, and you're done, and you don't need to pick up the phone to us at all.
Now, I have to admit that there was one point when I was helped by the embassy here. I can't remember. I think it was sometime 2014 or 2016 it was. I was going somewhere and my passport had disappeared, and the embassy did a brilliant job. Now, I noticed a little bit beforehand, so they just expedited the process and that. If I'm going to put a date in my calendar now for when my passport expires, right, to give me the best chance of having it, right? So, if I renew my passport this year, what date should I put 10 years from now? A month?
That's a really good question. And actually, it's a question we get sometimes here. A lot of people ask, do I have to have my passport with 3 months validity to use it? And within the EU, you don't. You can use your passport right up until the expiry date. But if you are travelling further afield, or if you need a visa or something like that for further international travel, it's good to have 3 months window in the expiry date of your passport, I would say. So I would say maybe give yourself 5 months if you're being very generous and very organised. Put that date in your calendar before the expiry of your passport, so that you know to renew well on time.
Tremendous. Let's finish on a high note. What country is the next place that you'll be using your passport in?
I'll be heading home, Phil, so back to Ireland.
Brilliant diplomatic answer. Doreen's been fantastic. Thanks for talking to me.
Thank you so much, Phil.
There she is. And I'm going to get it in quick, lads, right? If you're the ambassador to Sweden, or you're working for the Department of Foreign Affairs and you're listening in to Doreen there, I just want to say one thing. So don't press pause yet. Don't go on to the second captains or free stage with Joe Brolly and Dion Fanning, right? I want to tell you how wonderful Doreen and all the staff at the embassy, like Jim, like Tom, like Hannah, like all the people that we mentioned there, like Aideen, like the ambassador herself, Barbara Jones there, like they're just magnificent, and they do a tremendous job, and we should all be very, very grateful for what they do for us. Doreen as well is just absolutely brilliant. She's somebody who is very responsive. She's somebody who's very sensitive to the needs of the community here. She's somebody who's fascinated by the work. We were talking a little bit off air, and she was talking about consular cases and helping people, and we really are absolutely blessed by the calibre of people that we have working in our embassy. And that's the case around the globe. You know, it's almost like a vocation, you know, when people used to go off and join religious orders and that kind of thing, because, you know, they were looking to do something more than just a job. And I often find that with a lot of people who work for the Irish government abroad or for the Irish state abroad, and they're tremendous representatives, and we're really, really lucky to have them. Bookmark this episode, lads, right? And don't come charging at me now in June, just before midsummer, when you're going, oh, Jesus, now, did you do a podcast about renewing the passport? Because we're going to Greece in 2 weeks, and I haven't had a passport since 1959, like, you know. Bookmark it, listen to it, get your documents sorted out, get onto the crowd there. If you need a long form birth certificate, go onto the passport website and find out all the things you need. And if you do get stuck at all, if there's something that you can't get over, do contact the embassy. But they've made it so easy for us nowadays, you know. And as I say, the last ambassador, Austin Gormley, encouraged me to get the passport card, which he worked on when he was back in Dublin before he was even stationed in Sweden. And it's come in very, very useful for me, because I always have it in the wallet. So if I'm travelling anywhere in the EU, I keep the wallet always separate from the passport. So no matter what happens, I'm going to be able to get home one way or the other. Obviously, you can't do that if you're going to China or the States or maybe Australia or something. But certainly for those of us, and I'd say probably most of us do most of our travelling within the EU, well then, you know, it's just a brilliant idea. It's a no-brainer to get both the passport card and the passport. Right, lads, the old coffin fits are about to be sparked again, so I'll be back in the Lemsip now for the evening. Hopefully normal service will be resumed now next week. I didn't get any feedback whatsoever about in terms of the length of the episodes, and this one, as I'm looking at the recording now, we're up to just over 26 minutes here, you know. Let me know if you can, whether you like the slightly longer episodes, whether you think this length is perfect or that kind of thing, because I want to make something that you can listen to, and that you can listen to all of it every week. So if you have any feedback whatsoever, any guests you think I should have on, please do get in touch. Right, I'm off back into my bed with the Lemsips, as I say. If anybody's passing through Dublin Airport, feel free to get me a package of the old max strength ones, and I shall be back to you again next week with another episode of the Irish in Sweden podcast. Until then, my friends, take care of yourselves and take care of one another, and I'll see you very soon indeed.